And it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, who do you trust to fix broken Britain? The Conservatives and Labour parties traditionally go head-to-head come election time, but neither party is poised to claim a decisive victory. I mean, it could be naive to assume the Lib Dems and Reform won't play a role in the next election. And in today's Sunday Telegraph, David Blunkett says that Labour will need a miracle to get an overall majority. Former Labour MP Chris Mullin told GB News he doesn't think that the Tories will be a majority either. In a poll in The Sun, Rishi Sunak beat Sir Keir Starmer to be more trusted on the economy. But emails to GB Views shows a huge support for reform. Meanwhile, school buildings are collapsing, rail workers are on strike, the government have banned things like machetes, which I thought they were banned anyway, on rising crime. The cost of living crisis continues to drain bank balances. We had, let's look at the Liberal Democrats, for example. The last thing we remember them for was rowing back on the whole student loan issue. And other parties, Reform, for example, are untested. So who do you trust? Those are your options. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking that question. I'm joined now by Ben Habib, former Brexit Party MEP, Nigel Nelson, senior GB News political commentator, Neil Parish, Tory former MP and chair of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee, and also Norman Baker, former Liberal Democrat minister. OK, I'm going to start. I'm going to start with you, Neil. The Tories, I feel that they may be making some headway. Labour Party will hopefully, potentially be the ones that lose. I don't want to show my colours on this one. So what do you think, Neil? Who do you trust?
Yeah, Nana, sort of now being out of Parliament for about a year, 18 months and sort of looking back in, I actually think the British public must be absolutely confused, because I think most of the problems that the Tories have got are a lack of good management, a lack of getting things done properly, and people are pretty fed up with them. But if you actually look, at the Labour Party alternative, there doesn't seem to be a cigarette paper to put between the policies. And so I think it's going to be a very interesting election. And I think there's still a chance that the Conservatives, if they actually become more conservative, dare I say it, the economy appears to be a little bit stronger than we thought. Will there be an opportunity to allow a few tax cuts and try and stimulate the economy that way? It could be a much more interesting election than we think. But, I actually rather fear that the public must be very confused over who's the right party to govern at the moment, because I don't really see a massive alternative, but I can't say that Conservatives have exactly covered themselves in glory. And this latest school debacle, it's not so much that the buildings are in very bad repair, but why on earth was it left right to the end before telling the schools? And of course I do actually agree with the Labour spokesperson, because I was trying to get a school in Tiverton when I was the MP, and that was shelved after the Conservatives got into power. So she does have a point there. So lots of things to be done out there, but I don't think there's much alternative at the moment to actually perhaps seeing a Conservative government maintain. But
let's find out. Let's ask Norman, because Norman Baker, you're former Liberal Democrat minister. Have they got any hope of having any effect, the Liberal Democrats, in the political vote swinging?
Well, I think they are, in the sense that the by-election results in recent times have been very good for the Lib Dems, and rather better, I might say, than for the Labour Party. And for what it's worth, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Lib Dem, but I do think, as the polls will show, that we're likely to have a hung Parliament with the Lib Dems having the balance again, because I don't think Labour can climb that mountain, and I don't think the Tories can win from where they are. But in terms of the economy, which is what you wanted me to reflect on, Nana, I mean, again, I agree with Neil Parish, actually. There isn't a cigarette paper, to use his phrase, between the two parties. And the reason for that is that the Lib Party has adopted a policy of low risk, of following the Conservatives on everything, basically, but just simply saying we'll do it better than the Tories do. So there isn't really a choice for the public between the two main parties on that basis. We know that Keir Starmer is risk-averse, and I suspect that Rachel Reeves will continue as Jeremy Hunt has. Now, I don't think Jeremy Hunt's doing a particularly brilliant job. I don't think Rachel Reeves will do either, but that's where we are. So Neil's right that there isn't really a great choice. The Lib Dems, if they got the gumption, will actually use that position, that leverage, to drive forward more sensible, coherent policies. But I'm not convinced they will. I hope they will.
But, Norman, what makes you think that the Liberal Democrats actually will be the third party? Because they've sat there and they've been there. But I'm going to come to Ben Habib, because A lot of people, when we put the polls out there seems to be a lot of support for reform. Ben?
And rightly so. You know, if you want to fix Britain, in the first place, you have to believe in Britain. And you get the impression from the Conservative Party and Labour Party that they don't actually believe in this country. They want to rush back into the EU or stay hitched at the hip with the EU. They want economically emasculating net zero policies. Both parties have open borders. Both parties eschew the private sector and promote the state sector. Both parties want to tax us to hell. Neither party has the courage to cut regulations back or make national policy for British interest. To fix Britain, you've got to believe in Britain. And actually, there's only one party that unashamedly believes in the United Kingdom, and that is the Reform Party. Now, of course, we're not going to win the next election, but we're going to make a serious impact into both Labour and Conservative votes, and we're going to play a real pivotal role on how that election plays out.
Well, Norman seems to think that it'll probably be more likely to be the Liberal Democrats who have more sway. But Nigel, I suppose you may well detract votes from the Tory party. There is that. Nigel Nelson.
Well, I mean, I think that reform will do some damage for the Tories, but that's probably about it. We're at a stage in the electoral cycle where governments tend to get stale and run out of steam after about 13 years. It happened to Thatcher, it happened to New Labour, and that's where we are with the Tory party at the moment. So there will be a change. I do think there is a possibility of a hung parliament and a coalition. Certainly that's what the local election results would have shown. Although the polls are showing Labour hugely ahead, the chances are they will close before the election. And the last coalition government didn't do too bad a job. Certainly the Lib Dems stopped the Tories doing some of the extreme things they would have done without them.
But seriously, surely Labour Party shouldn't be clutching at this hope that there'll be some sort of coalition when, after what's gone on with the Tory party, you'd expect them to just simply take it. Why are they... They
should win by a landslide. I mean, it should be a 1997 landslide. But the only actual vote we can go on is the local election results. And although the Tories did really badly there, it still showed that if you'd extrapolated that to a national picture, it would have been a hung parliament.
OK, well, listen, I'm going to ask you individually then, who do you trust with the economy? Ben Habib?
Reform.
Nigel Nelson?
Labour.
Neil Parish?
Conservative under Rishi.
Under Rishi? And Norman?
Yes, because if you see in the opinion polls, he's a lot more popular than Keir Starmer. And if you look at the 97 election, you'll find that Tony Blair was massively more popular than John Major. So there's a lot to be played for there.
And Norman Baker?
Well, you'll be surprised if I say Lib Dems, but I have to say that the most stable government in the last 13 years has been a coalition. We were always told coalitions weren't stable. Actually, it lasted 5 years, and there are lots of good things. We got hammered for it, but we did a lot of good things in that government. There will be a coalition after the election. We're not going to go there again, but there may well be a supply arrangement with either party.
Interesting. Well, listen, thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Norman Baker. He's a former Liberal Democrat minister. Also, Neil Parish, former Tory MP and chair for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Select Committee. Nigel Nelson, GB News senior political commentator, and also Ben Habib, Brexit Party MEP.